everybody, and good Thursday evening to you. We're gearing up for the weekend, and what a wild ride we have ahead of us. Plenty to talk about on Weather for Weather Geeks this evening, so let's not waste any time. We'll get right to it. First, a quick review of where we've been over the last couple of weeks in terms of clouds. It's the cloudy season in eastern Ohio and western PA. We are one of the cloudiest spots in the entire lower 48 states at this time of the year, and certainly the last couple of weeks have lived up to that reputation. We haven't had a lot of bright and sunny days, and that's kind of what you would expect at the end of November into December, and usually, of course, it's pretty cloudy around here throughout the course of the winter, but December in particular tends to be very gloomy and overcast around our region. Good chunk of the reason why we have so many clouds at this time of the year, our proximity to the Great Lakes, and as colder air masses push over those relatively warm waters of the Great Lakes, clouds are usually the result, and so that can be something we can blame for all the clouds at this time of the year, our proximity to those lakes. We have many benefits from being so close to the Great Lakes, but in the winter, maybe not so much. Beautiful sunrise this morning with high clouds pushing in, made for a milky sky at times, but also a colorful sunrise. This time-lapse from Boardman also shows a little bit of snow still left on those grassy surfaces at the start of the day. But finally, we did get above freezing this afternoon after spending a couple of days below freezing, so the snow melted, and clouds won the battle. As we got into the afternoon, they thickened and lowered. Now, those clouds have been trying to produce a little precipitation over the last few hours, but this is all virga. For the most part, 95% of this is virga. It's precipitation that is evaporating before reaching the ground. So we have a layer of dry air in the lower levels of the atmosphere that's kind of eating this up, and aside from a sprinkle or a flurry this evening, things are looking quiet here locally. A pretty decent winter storm, though, taking shape from the Intermountain West up into the High Plains and into the Upper Midwest. A stripe of winter storm warnings are out from Utah and Colorado, heading up towards parts of the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan. Out ahead of that storm, of course, it's very warm compared to the average. High temperatures today, 22 degrees above average. St. Louis, 22 above in Dallas. It got into the 80s in Dallas. Again today, Omaha shared in the warmth, and this warm front is in fact pushing east. This is a very spring-like setup for the next couple of days. As low pressure strengthens, it's going to produce a lot of snow in the upper Midwest, but on the warm side of this, we'll have warm, even humid air pushing northward, and as a result, pretty good setup for severe weather tomorrow into tomorrow night across parts of the lower Ohio River Valley down into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Storm Prediction Center has issued an enhanced risk, a 3 on a 1 to 5 scale, for places such as Memphis and Evansville, and getting close to Nashville as well. Even up into western and central Ohio, the severe weather threat or risk is elevated tomorrow night. Not during the day tomorrow necessarily, but tomorrow night. And around here, I can't rule out a rumble of thunder late tomorrow night into Saturday morning. We'll talk a little bit more about our storm chances coming up momentarily. A pretty quiet day unfolding on Friday, though. A lot of clouds around, some peaks of sun at times, maybe a spritz or a sprinkle or a touch of drizzle, but most of the day will just be kind of uneventful. Showers hold off then until tomorrow night. Now, in the wee hours of Saturday morning, even before daybreak, this is unusual stuff. I mean, before daybreak, middle of December, thunderstorms, yeah, it's going to be possible. Even some gusty thunderstorms, while I do think that the severe weather risk overall is higher towards Cincinnati and Louisville and places like that. Around here, I can't rule out not only some thunderstorm activity, but maybe even a heavy thunderstorm. First thing in the morning, a ton of wind shear in the atmosphere Saturday morning. Limited instability, but some instability, even, especially considering it's December. And there's probably a non-zero tornado risk late Friday night into Saturday morning, maybe pushing up to I-71. I think that the risk is very close to zero here locally, maybe not quite zero, but I think it's a little higher as you get closer to I-71 and into central Ohio and southern Ohio late Friday night and early Saturday morning. So a round of showers and storms to kick off the day on Saturday. Storm Prediction Center does have the low end 1 on a 1 to 5 scale risk getting up into the I-70 corridor, even close to the Route 30 corridor in north central and eastern parts of the Buckeye State. So, yeah, craziness. And the record high Saturday is 61. We could break that at 7 in the morning on Saturday, with midday temperatures getting into the mid-60s. Wind overall, probably the highest impacts for us, even independent of thunderstorm activity. In other words, we may not have any thunder and lightning or thunderstorm activity, but even if we don't, it's still going to be awfully windy, and this is still going to cause problems late Friday night into Saturday morning. Already maybe some 40-mile-per-hour gusts as Saturday gets underway. I think the strongest winds, the most consistently strong winds, will be in the afternoon with the approach of our cold front. We're talking 45 to 50 here. This is going to be wind advisory criteria. There's already some high wind watches out for the lakeshore. Those will probably become high wind warnings for places such as Cleveland and Erie and Buffalo, and maybe Toledo as well. For our TV viewing area, this is probably pretty easily going to be wind advisory kind of stuff for Saturday afternoon. I think with those kinds of gusts, especially in the wake of some rain, which will maybe loosen up the ground a little bit, there's a pretty decent chance of some scattered power outages across our region. So it'll be a good time to make sure your devices are charged Friday night before you go to bed, because even Saturday morning we could have some strong winds. Overall, though, the highest risk of widespread outages maybe during the second half of the day on Saturday. So keep that in mind. So again, severe weather risk right now is on the lower end, but it's a non-zero risk, and certainly the risk of 45 to 50 mile per hour winds, even if there's no thunderstorms, is going to be elevated Saturday afternoon. But then the wind will slowly diminish Saturday night. We may get grazed by a couple of flurries Saturday evening. We'll go from 64 around midday Saturday to the 30s in probably 12 hours. And wind chills probably drop down into the upper teens and 20s for a time Saturday night. By Sunday, the clouds are gone. Actually, this is a bright and sunny day coming up on Sunday. And the atmosphere will be pretty well mixed on Sunday, meaning a pretty good chance of some frisky winds. Nothing like we'll have Saturday, but some frisky winds coming our way on Sunday. So after a record-breaking 64 Saturday, this is still above average Sunday. Our average is 40. So we'll do 43 coming up on Sunday. Now, compared to the average, the next 10 days looking like this. Wow. A few degrees above average Sunday, but then 10 or better above average from Monday through Friday. And while we may see a modest cool down next weekend, it is going to be a pretty modest one again. Overall, I think this pattern is a pretty warm one, taking us all the way up pretty close to Christmas. Let's spend a minute or two on the long range. Something I don't often talk about when we talk about long range stuff in this video is something we call the Madden-Julian oscillation. Basically, this is a cluster of semi-permanent thunderstorm activity in the Indian Ocean and into kind of Australia, Malaysia, places like that, New Zealand, and then it goes out into the Pacific and then kind of rounds the Earth and comes back again between 30 and 60 days later. Why is this important? Well, this cluster of storms, as it progresses through the Indian Ocean into the Pacific Ocean, can impact weather patterns downstream. And oftentimes the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, is a very important driver of weather patterns across North America in the winter season. We keep track of where those thunderstorms are. We call them phases. When they're in a certain region, it's phase 1 of the MJO. Phase 2, it goes up to phase 8. Certain phases correlate to warmer weather in the eastern United States in the winter, and certain phases correlate to colder weather. Generally, for eastern North America, the cold phases of the MJO are phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 8. Kind of the middle phases from 2 or maybe 3 through 6 and 7 are less cold. In fact, phase 6 is pretty warm. We're in phase 6 right now, which is why things are so balmy. Now, we got a fresh run of the European weeklies tonight, and as I roll this forward, this is going to go out 46 days. You're going to notice nothing changes on tonight's run of the Euro weeklies. We stay generally in the same pattern on this set of modeling through mid-January. Cold out west and mild in the east. Well, can we believe this? Does this make sense? There's reason for skepticism of this outcome. I think that because some of the modeling is showing the MJO heading into those cold phases. Now, the European, again, to the untrained eye, you may be looking at this and it just looks like gobbledygook, right? Well, here's phase 6, phase 7, and phase 8 right here. The European keeps the MJO in phase 6 and 7 all the way through early January. That's why it never gets cold around here. A lot of the other modeling that goes out this far does put the MJO in those colder phases, such as this is from the Australians. So it has the MJO progressing from phase 7 around Christmas into phase 8 between Christmas and New Year's and into early January. If this is the right idea, then it is going to get colder at the end of the month and into January. This idea has some support from some of the other modeling. The European weeklies, with their warm solution and keeping the MJO in phases 6 and 7, is kind of an outlier right now. So even though the European weeklies say, hey, winter's a non-starter this year, and it may end up being right, there's reason for skepticism. That when I show you the European weeklies, it's interesting to look at, but it is certainly not the gospel, and oftentimes is fairly off the mark in the longer range. We show you it because it's from the European Center, and they have a superior modeling program to us in the U.S., and a lot of times we can derive some value from those European weekly products. But I'm showing you tonight that maybe there's some reason for some skepticism with its extremely mild idea through mid-January. All right, long enough video for tonight. Thanks for watching tonight's Weather for Weather Geeks. On Friday, we'll have an update on that turbulent weekend forecast. We'll talk more about the white Christmas chances and some of the weather specifics in the run-up to Christmas.